We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabeg. The town of Petrolia is located on the land associated with the Huron-Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the lands and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the roll call, please.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Present.
Councillor Hyatt?
Present.
Councillor O'Hara? Councillor Patel?
Present.
Councillor Welsh?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Field?
Present.
Mayor Loosely?
Present.
And that is a quorum.
Thank you. I guess do we have Mr. John Mascarin online now? Okay. Mr. Mascarin, welcome. And I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
A little loud. A little loud.
I think that's from your end. It's not my end. I'll test it. 1, 2, 3. Is it still loud?
Very. Just a sec. We're adjusting it, I think, now.
Okay.
Can you whisper?
Can you hear me now?
Hear him in the background.
Okay. How's that now?
Still loud.
Oh.
Try again.
Okay.
How's that? Is that any better?
That's good.
Okay.
That's good. Okay, go
Terrific.
ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for inviting me this evening. Hello, members of council. Sorry, I didn't want to sound like I was yelling at you all evening, so I'm glad that was fixed. Mr. Mayor, I do have a formal presentation that I would like to present. I have a slide deck. I believe Ms. Pearson may have provided it to you. I'd like to go through it. And Mr. Mayor, if I could ask for your assistance, I have some natural breaks in the PowerPoint presentation as I'm going through. If it was okay with you, I might suggest that if I could just maybe pause at the what I think are the natural breaks in the presentation, and maybe I can ask if there are any questions at that time so that people don't have to wait till the end. Would that be all right with you, Mr. Mayor?
That's fine. That's no problem. And we also do have a copy of your presentation. And I have heard you several times with other municipalities, so go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll try to surprise you with something new this time, Mr. Mayor. I know that Ms. Pearson saw me deliver this a couple of weeks ago at OMAA, and I think it's new and improved now, Mandy. So that's what I have for you. Let me. I can share my screen, right? I will try to do so. Is my PowerPoint deck on screen now?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak to you today about the strong mayor powers. And as you know, on May the 1st, 2025, just a few weeks ago, your municipality, together with 169 other municipalities, whether you wanted it or not, have been granted strong mayor powers by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, by the provincial government. So what I plan to do is the tail end of what I'm presenting today will be an actual discussion of the specific powers, authorities, responsibilities, duties that you have as the strong mayor. I will take you through, though, a little bit of background. So how did we get here? Why did we get here? My thoughts. And then we can go through the powers and how they've been rolled out here in Ontario. So as a way of an introduction, I thought, what about an origin story? So I came up with a book that was written by our premier with his younger brother, Rob Ford, who you may recall was the mayor of Toronto for a tumultuous 4-year term, 2010 to 2014. Our current premier, Doug Ford, was a city council member in Toronto at that time. Shortly thereafter, there was a book written, Ford Nation, Two Brothers, One Vision. And this quote on the screen was attributed attributed to Doug Ford. If I ever get to the provincial level of politics, municipal affairs is the first thing I would want to change. I think mayors across the province deserve stronger powers. One person in charge with veto power. Now, the Ford family knew something about provincial politics because their father, the patriarch of the Ford family, was a one-time member of Queen's Park, the legislature at Queen's Park. He sat for I think a 3 or 4 year term during the provincial legislature. And so this was familiar to our premier, and I think what informs this is something that had happened at city council. His brother was often outvoted, and it wasn't unusual, or I wouldn't say it was usual, but it certainly wasn't terribly rare to see a 43-2 vote, with the 2 votes being the 2 Ford brothers. So I think that Premier Ford saw this happening and thought, well, you know, my brother's vision for the city of Toronto is being stymied. And if he had veto powers, like they do have in a number of American jurisdictions, San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and primarily the U.S. headquarters for Deco Labels and Tags, which is the very well-known Ford family successful business. Those are strong mayor municipalities. And I think he saw this and said, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Strong mayors in the U.S. typically do not actually sit on the city council. They sit apart from it. They are the mayor, the head of the municipality, the chief executive officer. They typically have the rights to bring forward and have the budget prepared as the mayor would want. Often would have veto powers and would have certain other powers of appointing certain chairs and vice chairs to various committees and things like that. You'll see that this notion of the strong mayor from the U.S. very much informs what the province of Ontario looked at in creating the strong mayor powers. So you have this vision that's put forward in a book called Two Brothers, One Vision, but then you need some excuse to implement it. Well, in Ontario, you have the Ontario housing shortage. So sometime shortly before the provincial election in June of 2022, where the Doug Ford progressive conservative government was given its second majority mandate here in Ontario, you have the Housing Affordability Task Force, which comes forward and says Ontario is in a housing crisis. Those are the first 6 words. Yeah, 6 words in the report. Why? Well, many fingers are pointed at issues with the municipalities. Development restrictions and zoning bylaws, inclusionary zoning, things like that, official plan designations that don't allow housing just anywhere you'd like to have it. And what about development charges? They're through the roof. Planning processing fees, building permit fees, user fees and charges, all things that municipalities impose. And then finally, even though it's the province that's responsible for the construction and building regulation authority, and it's the provincial regulation. It's been downloaded to municipalities as principal authorities to carry out building inspections and to issue permits. And what's the problem there? Building permits just don't get issued quickly enough. So a lot of fingers pointed to municipalities. There was an effort, and it was made very, very clear by former Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, that says we need to depoliticize the development approval process in order to disentangle the political quagmire that often goes on in municipalities and stifles the orderly and quick, prompt, diligent development of new housing in the province. So what did the province do? Instead of saying, hey, we'll start changing things in the legislature for statutes. It's just done that, by the way. If you do go and look at Bill 5 that's recently come forward and a number of the changes that are proposed there, you will see that a number of these things are being dealt with. There are amendments to the Ontario Building Code Act, there are amendments to the Planning Act and to the Development Charges Act, all going towards the building of new housing. But the province came up with this idea, well, let's build 1.5 million new homes and let's see if municipalities can help us. So before we get to strong mayors, what is traditional local governance system here in Ontario? Hey, it's been in place for over 200 years, since pre-Confederation here in Ontario, when we were still Upper Canada. What do we have? We have the weak mayor system. It's the traditional or historical system of local governmental democracy throughout Ontario, and in fact, throughout all jurisdictions in Canada, because all other jurisdictions except Quebec, which has the civil code, followed the common law and followed the lead of Ontario. And it's always been a weak mayor system. What does that mean? It means that even though the head of council is the ostensible leader of the municipality, the head of council is the spokesperson for the municipality. The head of council is really only a leader among equals. The head of council only has a single vote at council and has extremely limited unilateral executive authority. And I defy you to name me more than 5 things that a mayor can do by statute under the Municipal Act or otherwise. I'll name you 2. The state of emergency. A mayor can declare that and have certain emergency powers. The head of council does under the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, something that we discovered during the COVID pandemic. At council, what does the mayor have under the Municipal Act? The mayor can, under Section 241, expel anyone who is being unruly and disruptive at a council meeting. The mayor can do that without asking for anybody. Under the Criminal Code, the mayor has the authority of a peace officer in certain instances. I bet you didn't know that, but I would defy you to come up with a lot more of that. So we wrote a paper, my colleague and I, when we saw the Strong Mayors Building Homes Act first announced in the provincial legislature back in August of 2022. We wrote, and you can tell where I sort of stand on the legislation, Strong Mayor, Weak Plan was the title of our published paper. We wrote, the role of mayor has traditionally been viewed as a consensus builder, one where the head of council must work together in a spirit of cooperation and compromise with the other elected representatives of the municipality, i.e., the other elected members of council, in order to achieve a desired result. Because traditionally, historically, it's always been majority vote rules. And the mayor, typically only having 1 vote, was a weak mayor. Okay? Now, that's enshrined in the Municipal Act. The powers of a municipality in Section 5 sub 1 shall be exercised by its council. Well, that has changed. Number 3, sub 3 there, the powers, the municipal power must be exercised, shall be exercised by bylaw unless the municipality is specifically authorized to do otherwise. And I'm going to give you a number of examples now where the municipality is specifically authorized to do otherwise through the strong mayor powers. So now I'm going to just talk a little bit about the evolution and the start of strong mayor powers, and then I'll take a short first break. So there are 4 sources to the strong mayor powers. There are 2 statutes and there are 2 regulations. You have to read them together, okay? So the first one, the Strong Mayors Building Homes Act. In February of 2022, you have the Provincial Housing Task Force. Ontario is in a housing crisis. Ontario responds. We will commit to building 1.5 million new homes before the end of the year, before the end of 2031. Okay, so what does the province do? During the election campaign, nary a word was spoken about strong mayors. Neither the Premier uttered the word strong mayors, nor did the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. But yet, Bill 3, one of the first bills of the new second majority Conservative government, brings forward Strong Mayors Building Homes Act. So that'll give you an indication of where the province is going. It is strong mayor powers are supposed to foster the ability to deliver on the provincial commitment of 1.5 million new homes by December of 2031. What the province did in this statute is it created a standalone Part 6.1 of the Municipal Act, and in case you're wondering what COTA is the City of Toronto Act. It added this new part entitled Special Powers and Duties of the Head of Council in the Municipal Act. And these are where the strong mayor powers come from. Okay, so during this presentation, I will often refer to strong mayor powers, and sometimes I'll just refer to Part 6.1. That is where the strong mayor powers are encapsulated. Okay, again, no mention made during the provincial election campaign by anybody that this would be coming forward. I think the Bill 3 was first announced in late August, and I believe late September is when it was enacted. Then in October, November, you have a different statute coming forward, the ironically named Better Municipal Governance Act, which added one new section to Part 6.1. Okay, Bill 39, I think it was given royal assent in December of 2022. It added one new section that is only one section, but it's a very significant section, and I'll speak to it in just a few moments. Now, those are the statutory amendments. Together with those, you have to look at the regulations. There are two regulations, 530-22 and 580-22. The first regulation is the regulation that actually was triggered in order to designate the town of Petrolia as a strong mayor municipality. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has power under Section 284.2, which is found in Part 6.1, where the minister has the authority to designate municipalities as strong mayor municipalities. You'll see that the amendment that came forward on May the 1st, Amendment 4125, is labeled Section 1, and what that is an amendment to the base regulation where Section 1 added the 170 additional municipalities to the 46 municipalities that had already been given strong mayor powers. And that regulation also sets out a number of procedural and technical rules, including some definitions for how the strong mayor powers are to be discharged, implemented, and carried out. Okay? Then there is one final piece to the puzzle. There are in Regulation 580-22 the prescribed provincial priorities. You will see that there is a separate regulation-making authority in the statute that allows the cabinet, not just the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, but the cabinet to prescribe provincial priorities. And taking away all the suspense, even though I will show you the full regulation, it prescribes this government's provincial priorities as housing, particularly the 1.5 million new homes, and infrastructure related to housing, roads, transit, servicing, utilities. That is what's specified in the regulation, and the regulation is made expressly for 3 separate sections in the Municipal Act where the mayor or the head of council, I'm going to keep referring to it as mayor, the mayor has the authority to take certain actions under the statute in order to deliver on the provincial priorities. And I will speak to each of those in some detail going forward. Now, just before I go to the powers, I just want to talk about the rollout of the designations. The authority for strong mayor powers was originally granted only to the cities of Ottawa and Toronto. And if you read the debates in the Legislative Assembly in Hansard, you will see very clearly that when former Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, brought this forward, as well as his parliamentary assistant spoke to this, they said, we are bringing this forward as a pilot project only to these 2 municipalities. Why? Because they were the 2 municipalities that were in most need of housing, and particularly affordable housing. The Premier indicated it was a pilot project, and the Minister indicated that these 2 municipalities, Ottawa and Toronto, were the test cases, and they were the 2 municipalities that were shovel-ready to use the strong mayor powers. Well, that was really interesting because Mayor Jim Watson in the city of Ottawa wanted nothing to do with the strong mayor powers. And when he actually did receive them, he attempted to give them back or to disclaim them to the extent that he could. Interestingly, in contradistinction, former City of Toronto Mayor John Tory readily embraced the strong mayor powers, and then it came out, in fact, that he had been secretly lobbying the provincial government to get enhanced strong mayor powers for the City of Toronto. About 10 months later, it was announced that any municipalities that had populations of over 100,000 or were projected to have populations of over 100,000 persons by December of 2031 would be given strong mayor powers as of Canada Day 2023. These municipalities had to commit, their councils had to commit to adhering to the provincial housing construction targets. And the province dangled a carrot in front of them by establishing a $1.2 billion Building Faster Fund that if these municipalities exceeded the targets, they would be entitled to have some share of that money. Now, a short time later, and it came to a surprise to a number of municipalities, it certainly came to my surprise, I didn't think that the province would do it this quickly. Sometime in September, the former minister, Clark, wrote to 21 additional municipalities and said, hey, if your mayor executes a pledge to commit to the provincial construction housing targets, your municipality will receive strong mayor powers on Halloween. So this is really interesting because the minister, unlike the first batch, the first tranche of municipalities, this time said if the mayor executes a pledge. So this is interesting, giving the mayor perhaps strong mayor powers even before they have strong mayor powers. You'll see on my screen that on October 31st, 18 more municipalities were designated as strong mayor municipalities. 21 had been offered the opportunity, but only 18's 18 municipalities had their mayors actually commit to the housing pledge. I understand that some of the issues for the 3 that didn't come on board were infrastructure issues. They just didn't have the servicing in place to be able to commit to those housing starts. Okay, so there was originally 2, then 27, and then 18 more that came on board. So at this time, there were 3 tranches. Then there was a 4A tranche. You may have even heard about this. On April the 3rd of this year, the city of Aurelia was granted temporary strong mayor powers in order to deal with the state of emergency in the city of Aurelia dealing with the ice storm. So this is curious. Remember I said the impetus and the raison d'etre to have strong mayor powers was to build homes. And yet, both Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing Rob Flack and Mayor McIsaac in Aurelia both said we got strong mayor powers. They were given strong mayor powers in order to deal with the state of emergency. Heck, I thought the whole purpose of the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act was to deal with states of emergency. I was wrong. Finally, the 4th tranche, Ontario Newsroom issued a media release, a press release on April the 9th, which caught many municipalities off guard, potentially the town of Petrolia. The title was what I have on the screen, Ontario proposing to expand strong mayor powers to 169 additional municipalities. No prior notice had been given to these municipalities of the proposed powers to be granted as of May the 1st. The powers were to be the municipalities were to be listed on the provincial registry for the provincial environmental registry for a whole 1 week, where municipalities could come, and others, I suppose, could come and comment. So the first tranche was given to powers to municipalities because they were shovel ready. Toronto and Ottawa, 2 of the bigger municipalities. Then 27 municipalities based on population of 100,000. The next grouping of 18 municipalities was because those municipalities were going to have populations projected or existing of 50,000 or more. This time around, what was used? Not population anymore. The strong mayor powers were proposed to be given to municipalities if they had councils of 6 persons or more. So 6 members or more. That was the cutoff. Well, the smallest council that you can have in Ontario is 5 under the Municipal Act or under restructuring orders. So what the province did is said, well, we won't go to the smallest, but we'll go to the next. Any municipality with 6 or more that are single tier or lower tier, which I think shows where the province may be thinking about upper tier governments, those municipalities possibly would receive strong mayor powers as of May the 1st. Many municipalities said, we don't want them. We will have a special council meeting. We will mobilize. We will pass a resolution. Perhaps our mayor will agree to it, and we will post that as comments on the provincial environmental registry, and we will write to the minister. And yet, on May the 1st, 170 municipalities, and if you're wondering why is there 170 when 169 were announced, it's because the city of Aurelia is now included. They received this standard letter, which I only got the first paragraph from Minister Flack saying, hey, we've committed to our expression, our government's announcement that we will expand. And by the way, now this includes your municipality. Mayor Loosley, you would have received this letter together probably with your staff on the morning of May the 1st, announcing that now you are subject to strong mayor powers. Well, a number of organizations the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, spoke out very strongly. The Ontario Municipal Administrators Association did the same thing, basically saying we don't think this is such a good idea, and stood behind their municipalities. AMO, not so much. AMO, a bit unequivocal and really pretty lackadaisical in its comments. You'll see that there are comments from the president of AMO on the press release, basically saying Ontario's mayors can be trusted to fulfill the needs and look out for their municipalities. I think that's left a lot of council members going, well, what about me? I think I ran to be able to govern my municipality. What does this mean for me? Which is the $1,000,000 question, or if we go back to my time, the $64,000 question. So, Mr. Mayor, I have come to the end of what I would call the prologue, the bit of historical prologue. I don't really think there's going to be any questions, but let me take a pause right now and I'll ask if you or any members of council have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mascarin. I'll open it up to council. Does council have any questions so far regarding his presentation? No, I think we're okay to carry on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. By the way, if you were wondering, that seems to be the typical response I get when I end the first part there. Now I will now get to the powers. I've divided them essentially into 3 categories, even though you'll see 4 listings here. There are 3 types of powers that I have found in the legislation. I call the first ones administrative powers. Some people will call them administrative/political, and I'll explain why. They're not totally wrong. The next group I call provincial priority powers. Those are the 3 powers in the Municipal Act that can only be exercised in order to further the delivery of the prescribed provincial priorities of this particular government. Some municipalities have been referring to those as legislative powers. That's not wrong, but I thought provincial priority powers was the better moniker. Then there is, and Mr. Mayor, you might quibble with me if I call it a budget power. You might call it a budget duty, obligation, or responsibility. And again, I wouldn't challenge you on that. You may be absolutely right. And then I have a broad category at the end where I'll try to wrap some of these together, and I'll refer to them as miscellaneous. They're not necessarily powers. They are things that you should know about the strong mayor powers. So again, Mr. Mayor, I'll go through each one of these, and then I'll take a short pause if anyone would like to ask any questions. The first grouping that I'll talk about is the administrative powers. If you read the Collingwood Judicial Inquiry from November of 2020, Justice Morocco, who sat as the Public Inquiry Commissioner, very clearly said no member of council, including the head of council, has any authority to unilaterally direct any staff member to do anything in particular unless they've been delegated by council. Well, surprise, surprise, this is all changed. Section 284.3 provides express authority for the head of council to provide direction to municipal employees, that's the language that's chosen, and it's not a defined term, to direct municipal employees to undertake research, implement decisions, and to provide advice to the head of council and the municipality. Now, if you're saying to yourself, that language sounds very familiar, it's because it is. Currently, under Section 228 of the Municipal Act, that is the section that talks about what the municipal administration is responsible to do. And one of the things that the municipal administration is responsible for is to take direction from council, to undertake research on behalf of council, and to implement decisions and provide advice to council. So The rules of engagement have now changed. So that language is still there, but now you have this particular provision. Now, I've stated it very, very broadly, but it's actually a little bit more limited than what I just said. The head of council has the authority to provide directions to staff, but only with respect to the head of council's powers under Part 6.1. Powers relate to the exercise of general control and management of the affairs of the administration, and to advancing or seeing that there is no interference with provincial priorities. Those are what the powers are. And if you're concerned that the mayor may be whispering behind closed doors to the clerk, the CAO, the treasurer, well, that is not how directions to staff are to be communicated. Directions to staff are to be communicated only in writing. And if the mayor does this, the directions have to become publicly available, and they have to be provided both to the clerk, who I think Ms. Pearson is responsible for making them available to the public, and to the CAO, so the CAO is aware, so you're not going to get Mr. Charlebois caught off guard. So there is some transparency and public accountability to the direction. The second administrative power, one that's received some notoriety for now the erosion of the governance executive arm to the administration, operational, and management arm, is now the authority of the head of council to be able to hire and terminate, to appoint and revoke the appointment of the municipality's chief administrative officer. Now, some persons have misinterpreted what this power actually says. I've put it up on the screen here. 284.5 says, the powers of a municipality under Section 229 with respect to the chief administrative officer are assigned to the head of council. Many persons have misinterpreted that to think the mayor now is transferred the CAO's powers under Section 229. That's not what it says. It says the powers of a municipality under 229. What are those powers? To appoint and terminate the chief administrative officer. The powers are not to vest in the office of the mayor the powers of the chief administrative officer. It is simply to select and to remove the chief administrative officer. So, quite honestly, I had always said during my career, the council has one employee, and that employee is the mayor. Well, this seems to now have changed. One important part about this is the mayor is expressly authorized to delegate back this power to council. Okay? The next authority, the administrative authority, the municipal organization, its determination and its reorganization is now at the behest of the head of council. The power to determine the organizational structure of the municipality now resides in the office of the mayor. What is organizational structure? It is a not defined term in the statute. I asked two of my municipal partners who practice employment law, who often help me with municipal work and municipal clients, and they said to me, that's an interesting choice of words, because organizational structure is not a term of art in employment law. In fact, if you look at important employment law statutes, the Employment Standards Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Labor Relations Act, you will not see the term organizational structure used. I didn't really believe them. I did my own keyword search of those three statutes. They were absolutely right. It is not in there. My view, my interpretation undefined term, not used elsewhere. Why would you use it? Probably to give it its maximum flexibility. Now, because the mayor can determine the organizational structure of the municipality, how people report, what realms they report in, what powers they have, the mayor is also given the power to hire and dismiss and to exercise such prescribed employment law powers as the minister makes with respect to division heads, persons who are the heads of divisions of a municipality. So, division heads, not a defined term. I've put on the screen department because that seems to focus my thinking. And in fact, if you look at Hansard and you look at the statements made by Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, when he was introducing this, he didn't refer to division heads. He referred to department heads, which was really interesting because that's how I thought about it. So what are division heads? I don't know. Every municipality is different. I wouldn't know unless I look at an organizational chart for your municipality and potentially sit down with your CAO and maybe your HR director to understand who may be a division head. But concomitant with the mayor's authority to be able to set the organizational structure, it has to go hand in hand that the mayor is also able to hire and terminate people who may be running the divisions of the municipality. Now, there is a carve-out. Subsection 3 says that the authority to hire and terminate division heads does not extend to persons who are statutory officers. And on the screen, I've just put a couple of them. If you look at the legislation, I think there's a listing of nine separate statutory officers. The clerk, the deputy clerk, the treasurer, deputy treasurer, the fire chief, the chief building official, the integrity commissioner. Those persons cannot be removed by the mayor. The mayor cannot hire or terminate those persons. And it includes persons that you wouldn't normally think of as being statutory officers. Maybe because they're not, but they are, and look at the last line of the second sub-bullet there, other officers that are required to be appointed by any other act. A drainage superintendent, for instance, under the Drainage Act. The building inspectors under the Building Code Act. Weed control officers under the Weed Control Act. Those are all persons who are required to be appointed, and those people can't be removed. So any organizational structure that was in place at your municipality on May the 1st, when the strong mayor powers were first given to Petrolia, remain in place unless they're changed by the mayor. And any person who is a division head remains in place and employed together with any of their vested common law benefits, rights, or entitlements, because they are in place and those aren't done away with. Unless they've been, then the mayor can dismiss them. So they remain in place until dismissed by the mayor, division heads. So what happens if the mayor would like to remove a division head but has no cause to do so? Can the mayor remove someone without cause? The answer is unequivocally, absolutely yes. The mayor can do so. The second corollary question is, can the mayor remove anybody even without cause with impunity? And the answer is no, because of what I just said. On May the 1st, if someone had been a long-time employee of the municipality, had 5 years, 10 years, 20 years with your municipality, the mayor can dismiss them and doesn't need cause. However, there will be a cost to the municipality should the mayor remove someone, because that person would be entitled to whatever they're entitled to at the common law. So certain notice, certain severance, and potentially damages as well. Okay? So Removing without cause, yes, you can do that. Removing with impunity, no. There will be a cost to the municipality should the mayor exercise any of these powers. This authority for the organizational structure that carries with it the power to hire and terminate division heads can be a power that a mayor can delegate back to either council or to the CAO. Okay? The next set of powers are often referred to as political powers, and I get that. With respect to prescribed boards, the mayor has the authority to appoint the chairs and vice chairs. Again, I'm going to take the suspense out of this. There are no prescribed boards under the regulation. When the word prescribed is used in the statute, it means prescribed under a regulation. And the two regulations that exist don't prescribe any local boards. So for the moment, it is an empty shell of a power that the mayor has the power but can't exercise it because there are no prescribed boards. With respect to committees, Section 284.8 speaks to the powers of a mayor to establish or dissolve prescribed committees, to appoint the chairs or vice chairs of prescribed committees, and to set the terms of reference for prescribed committees. Hallelujah, though, there is a definition of a prescribed committee. It is a committee that consists solely of members of council. Now, when I was originally doing this, I would refer to them as committees of council. I think that's wrong. I think the term committee of council means a committee comprised of all members of council. That is not what a prescribed committee is. It is a committee consisting solely of members of council, but not all necessarily members of the council. So your municipality, 7 members. This prescribed committee can be a committee with less than 7 members, provided, though, it only is constituted by members of council. So it wouldn't include any of your existing advisory boards or committees that comprise of members of council together with members of the public. Okay? These powers can also be delegated back to council by the mayor. And here is the delegation authority. There is the authority of the mayor to be able to delegate these powers back. Chief Administrative Officer, only to council. Organizational structure, only to council or to the CAO. Local boards, none exist right now because there are no prescribed ones, and prescribed committees can be delegated back to council. The rules with respect to delegation, they have to be made in accordance with 23.1 sub 2 of the Municipal Act. If you read that, I believe that there are 6 rules in that particular provision. Those rules continue to apply with respect to any delegations that have been made by the mayor. So, for example, if the mayor delegates the power of the organizational structure to the CAO, is the mayor entitled to revoke that delegation? And the answer is found in 23.1 sub 2. Yes. In fact, anyone who gives up a delegation of power always retains the delegation of power. That continues to exist. Will the delegation extend beyond the term of council? The answer is yes. But should there be a new mayor at some future time, that new mayor can revoke the designation. Or conversely, let's say the mayor today doesn't delegate any of these powers, even though the mayor can. Can the new mayor at a future date possibly extend the delegations? Yes, the mayor can do so. So they continue to exist, except to the extent that a future mayor may change things. So, Mr. Mayor, I've now come to the end of the administrative and slash political powers. I'm going to take a pause and ask if there are any questions at this time with respect to the administrative powers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mascarin. I will open it up to council. Any questions from council regarding his report so far? Councillor Clark.
So prior to May 1st, just for clarity, the CAO overseeing all of the staff below him, his position, made the decisions on the department heads or division heads, whatever you want to call them. Post May 1st, the mayor has the capabilities to make those changes. How does that affect the CAO? Does he still have that capability as well, or is that completely out of his hands? That's my first question.
Yeah,
Mr. Mascarin, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Clark. Great question. The CAO has now had a divestiture of his powers. So Mr. Schallenbrand may have been appointed by council. The appointment bylaw may have said you're responsible for all of staff below you. It could have been in his appointment bylaw, in his employment contract, even in his job description. It has now changed. The legislature has come in and said, nope, the mayor now has authority over division heads. Yes, the mayor can delegate that back, but the law has changed. And I've also been asked this question, Councillor Clark, in case you were going to ask, does that constitute constructive dismissal of the CAO? The answer is no. The employer would have had to do something to create the state of affairs and any kind of constructive dismissal. This has potentially occurred by operation of law, so it wouldn't be a constructive dismissal to your CAO, notwithstanding what his contract or appointment bylaw may have said.
So we've kind of effectively tied our CAO's hands behind his back.
I'll answer it this way, Mayor Loosely, through you. I don't think you did this.
No.
I think the provincial government did this for you, and thought that this would be a good thing to do. So the provincial government has done this. It wasn't any doing of the municipality.
So I just have
Yeah,
one more.
go ahead,
question.
Mr. Clark.
So if the CAO is still technically supervising these people and he makes changes within the organization, then I'm assuming that post May 1st, the mayor can change those back in any way, shape, or form that he wants to.
I'll answer it this way through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clark. Technically, unless the mayor delegates back, the mayor has the authority. The CAO does not have the authority with respect to organizational structure after May the 1st. And so I suppose if the CAO attempts to exercise the authority, the mayor can undo it, the way I think you've said it there. But my view is the CAO wouldn't have the authority now unless there's a redelegation back.
Councillor Clark.
Sorry, one more question. So going forward, if we want to add a position, then the mayor is now hiring the new people and not the CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to division heads, yes, the answer is the mayor would be responsible to do that.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mascarin. Go ahead. We'll carry on.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I thought I was going to ask this question. That's why I didn't say it. So let me say it now, just before I move on. Many people have said to me, well, the intent of the legislation is to advance building, to deliver new homes. But what you've shown so far, what I've talked about so far, doesn't seem to align or directly relate. There's no nexus between building homes and some of these changes, which I've shown you. And I would say, thought I was going to get the question, I would say that's correct. There is no direct linkage between these powers that I've just shown you and building homes. So I will now get to, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go to the next one, and these are the provincial priorities. Now, these ones relate specifically to the building of new homes and infrastructure. There is a regulation making authority that is given to the Lieutenant Governor and Council, i.e. Cabinet, at the provincial legislature to prescribe provincial priorities for 3 sections of the Municipal Act. They're set out right there. I want to be really clear. These are the provincial priorities that the current government has put in place. And I'll show you what regulation was enacted. Here it is, 58022. These are the provincial priorities. Building 1.5 million new residential units by December 31st, 2031, and constructing and maintaining infrastructure to support housing, which includes those 4 things: transit, roads, utilities, and servicing. Okay, these are the prescribed provincial priorities of this particular government. People have asked me, what happens if the Premier Ford government was not given the mandate to form the government in February of this year and had lost the election? What if the NDP, led by Merritt Stiles, had won the election? Would housing still remain a provincial priority? Well, my answer is yes, unless it's changed. But that government, the NDP government, could have changed it, and you could, surmise, speculate on what provincial priorities might have been put in place by an NDP government, or by a Liberal government, or by a Green government. If the Green Party had won the election, would we possibly have seen provincial priorities related to the environment? I would dare say probably yes. So the provincial priorities relate specifically to what the current government would like to see in place. And right now, the provincial priorities are housing and infrastructure related to housing. And if the question is, that sounds very broad, the answer is, I think it really is. Okay, so let me talk to you now about the 3 specific powers. The first power, as you know, as a council, you have a mandatory bylaw that you must enact. Now, almost all bylaws that the Council of the Town of Petrolia enacts are not mandatory. They're permissive. You have discretion. The one that you have to is a procedure bylaw. The procedure bylaw sets out a number of things, including the rules for how a meeting is to be conducted. This authority right here says, notwithstanding or despite what the procedure bylaw says, if the head of council forms the opinion that a matter that will potentially or may potentially advance a provincial priority is at play, the head of council may bring that forward to council for council's consideration. So here, the mayor, if the mayor forms the opinion, not anyone else's opinion, his opinion, that there may be a potential advancement of provincial priorities, the mayor can bring forward a matter for council to consider, notwithstanding what the procedure bylaw says about new business or notices of motion or reconsiderations. The mayor can do so. Interestingly enough, the very last bullet on the screen says, unlike a authority that I will talk in 2 slides from now, the mayor can't require council to vote on it, only to consider the matter. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is a power that had received quite a bit of notoriety, and that is the veto power. This is under section 284.11. The head of council, if the head of council forms the opinion that a bylaw potentially interferes with a provincial priority, the mayor can veto that bylaw. Now, there are some restrictions. The bylaw can only be a bylaw under the Municipal Act, under the Planning Act, and under a prescribed statute. And to date, there's only one prescribed statute, and it's Section 2 of the Development Charges Act. So if it relates to one of those bylaws, the mayor may be able to veto a recently enacted bylaw of the municipality. So I've said the word recent. The mayor can't go and veto any bylaw. Now I've said recent because the regulation requires that a veto, the mayor give notice of the potential exercise of the veto within 2 days of the council vote. Okay? That's why I've said it was recent. You can only exercise this in relating to any bylaw that's passed after May the 1st, and only if the mayor, within 2 days of a vote of council on a bylaw, says, I am going to consider vetoing this bylaw. So notice has to be given. Then the mayor must, if he wants to veto the bylaw, must actually exercise a direction or a decision, a veto with supporting reasons within 14 days of the original decision that was made. So if the mayor waits 2 days to give notice from the vote, then the mayor only has 12 days from that date. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, council can override the mayor's veto by a 2/3 vote of council. That is a 2/3 vote of your entire council, not a 2/3 vote of a majority of council, okay, or the council members that are present. So let me say it this way. A quorum can be achieved under Section 237 of the Municipal Act by having a majority of members present. In your municipality, a majority of members, of 7 members, would be 4. You can actually have a meeting of 4 members of council and have a valid meeting. However, could council have a 2/3 vote with only 4 members present? No. In your municipality, you would need 5 members to be present. You need 5 out of 7. The language is, it is a 2/3 vote of council. That is the entire composition of council. It is not just the members who are present. That has to be done within 21 days of the date that the clerk provides notice to the members of the mayor's exercise of veto. And here's the kicker. The head of council can vote on the override. So you've already lost 1 vote there. So out of a council of 7, you have to sway everybody except the mayor and possibly 1 other person in order to override the mayor's veto by a 2/3 vote. Okay? And then finally, there is the power that was put in place by Bill 39, the Better Municipal Governance Act. It allows the head of council, if the head of council forms the opinion that a bylaw may potentially advance a provincial priority, and it relates to a bylaw under the Municipal Act, under the Planning Act, and under the Development Charge bylaw, the mayor can propose the bylaw to be voted by council, and it has to have supporting reasons there. The supporting reasons would go, I assume, to indicating why it's advancing provincial priorities, and the mayor can require council to vote, and the vote is just more than 1/3 of council. In your case, 1/3 of council would be what would it be? 7 members would be 2 1/3, right? I got that right? Yeah. And so with the mayor, you'd need 3 votes on council to be able to get it passed. So you no longer need 4 votes. This is the one that's been termed undemocratic. The head of council is entitled to vote on the bylaw. So you've already got the mayor, presumably the mayor is always going to vote for a bylaw in which he proposes to be advanced. So the mayor will only need 2 other votes on council in order to have the bylaw advancing provincial priorities to be enacted. There has been one challenge to date on strong mayor powers. It has been in place for almost 3 years, but there hasn't been any judicial decisions. The mayor of Peterborough passed a bylaw or advanced the bylaw, and it was enacted by council under this section by a vote of 4 to 7, and it passed because it was more than 1/3 of council. There's 11 members on City of Peterborough Council. 4 members would have been a third, more than a third. So 3 members plus the mayor brought it over a third of council. It was enacted. That bylaw has actually been challenged. There is a court proceeding. I've seen the materials. In my estimation, they're not terribly strong. They basically say the mayor exercised his authority under section 284.11.1. The mayor should not have exercised his authority. Basically, it doesn't say more than that. That had a hearing date, I believe, of June the 10th, but I'm not sure if that's the full hearing of the substantive argument or not. So, Mr. Mayor, those are the 3 powers that you have now that can only be exercised by the mayor and can only be exercised to either advance provincial priorities or to have them not have a bylaw not interfere with delivering provincial priorities. So I'll ask if there are any questions at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mascarin. I'll open it up to council. Any questions for Mr. Mascarin? Councillor Welsh.
I have a couple actually that were sent to me by a resident, and this might be the place to answer them. Can the mayor, using these powers to use his approval stamp, in quotes, just say yes to housing developments that are put forward without current issues being resolved?
Mr. Mascarin, can you speak to that, please?
Yes. Well, I probably, Councillor Welsh, wouldn't say it quite that dramatically, but yes, the mayor can say, I am of the view that this development here will advance a provincial priority, and I will ask that it go ahead. And the mayor has the authority to advance that bylaw and to potentially get the support of 2 other members of council to have that bylaw enacted. And the question is, but it may not comply with all of the planning requirements and standards that have been put in place. So it could possibly still be challenged to the extent that there are third-party rights still to challenge rezoning bylaws in front of the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Ms. Welsh, do you have anything else?
Yep.
Go ahead.
There are actually 3 questions. Can the mayor use his approval stamp and just say yes with 2 councillors' approval? Although it might be against the current council wishes. I think you might have answered this. For example, the overnight winter parking by permit that we just had at our council.
Mr. Mascarin, can you address
Yes,
that, please?
through you, Mr. Mayor. The answer is, if it can advance provincial priorities, then yes, the answer is yes to your question. I'm not sure how what you've just described, overnight parking, would actually advance provincial priorities, but it may. I don't know, but you would have to make that connection.
I wouldn't think so. That's just my opinion. Councillor Welsh, go ahead.
And the last question, what recourse do opposing councillors have against strong mayor's powers?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Welsh. That's the big question. Many councillors are asking this. So the province has set this upon you. It's now legislation, and if someone doesn't like it, it's still there. So can strong mayor powers be challenged? Yes, they can. And Councillor Welsh, if you could, if you don't mind, I will answer the question because there is a slide coming up shortly, and it does talk about the potential challenges and some protections that are afforded to the mayor. If you don't mind, could I answer it at that point? And I will get to it shortly.
Councillor Wells, okay with that? Okay, thank you. Councillor Hyatt, go ahead.
Thank you, through you. Just one question related to the procedural bylaw and how we ensure that we have mandatory special meetings for overrides of vetoes from council. Like how does that process need to take place?
Mr. Mascarin, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Hyatt, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I have been asked this question because the veto power can be overridden, but you have to bring it within 21 days. What happens if there's no meeting? Many municipalities have, some have asked me this question. Would it be appropriate or would it be possible for a municipality to change its procedure bylaw so that it could be that a special council meeting can be requested and required, perhaps on an expedited basis, in order to fulfill the requirements there? And my answer is yes. I think that is something that council can do, can put in a clause where it might make it simpler, or not as complicated, or not as arduous, or maybe not only at the behest of the mayor in order to have a special council meeting, so that council could possibly exercise its authority within 21 days to veto the mayor's veto, to override the mayor's veto. So those sorts of clauses can be put in to a procedure bylaw. In my view, they wouldn't necessarily conflict directly with the strong mayor powers. It would just be a way to allow a council to potentially exercise its power. So I don't see it as a direct conflict.
Thank you.
Councillor Hyatt, are you okay with that?
Thank you. No, sure. Councillor Clark has-
Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Through the mayor, how do you resolve, let's call it a differing of opinion on what's a provincial priority and what isn't? What if I
Yes.
feel it isn't, but the mayor feels that it is? How do we determine who's right and who's wrong?
Yeah.
Mr. Mascarin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and to Councillor Clark, that is a really key question that many have been asking. The province has not set up anything that is some sort of mediation, arbitration, quick decision mechanism. So my answer, I think, is, and I will get to answer Councillor Welsh's question as well, I think the only ability to do so is to go to court on it, to question whether something is a potential advancement or a potential interference with provincial priorities. And remember, the way this has been set up is the mayor has to have an opinion on this. An opinion is something that typically is used in a statute to connote some sort of discretionary ability to make a determination. So you've got the mayor's opinion that something may potentially advance or potentially interfere with a provincial priority. I would submit to you that that's a lot of loose language that would be quite flexible or elastic in actual discharge. And so I think, quite honestly, the province has set it up in this way to make it harder to challenge a mayor's determination.
Deputy Mayor Field, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. I guess I'll say a statement first, and then I do have a question. The amount of time that we're taking with strong mayor's powers should be put on the priorities of the province. And we're talking about housing as being a priority, and we're spending so much time talking about strong mayor's powers. That just irritates me. So the delegation of authority for the hiring, the delegation of authority back to the CAO or back to council can be done at any time. It could go back and then it could be taken back, correct?
That's through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
So is there any benefit to taking the chance of not delegating that authority back and having something slip or fall or so a mayor could delegate it back, take it back at any time. So there's no real need to have it the whole time. Is that? I I don't know. I think I'm answering my own question. Okay.
You want to comment on that?
I think you're saying, Councillor Field, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you're saying if the mayor could take it back at any time, what's the point of delegating it? I think a delegation is a symbolic gesture. It is also a substantive gesture. Yes, it can be taken back at any time, but I think it does show something, and I've seen many councils do it. Having said that, I will not stand in the way of any mayor who says, no, I don't want to delegate it back. I want to keep it. The mayor has been granted that authority. So I don't think it's fair for someone then to come in and go, well, that's inappropriate for you to treat it like that. You should give it back. And I think that's a decision that each mayor should make based on their particular community and their particular council.
Okay, thank you. That
Yeah, and I have a comment when we're all done regarding this to Mr. Mascarin, but carry on, please. Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Patel, go ahead.
So is it a fair statement to say that even though the role of the CAO has changed dramatically as an elected official holding a council position, I think that role has greatly changed as well?
Mr. Mascarin?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would agree with that statement, though the role of the CAO has changed significantly. And I think the role of the mayor, even more so. I think that the CEO now looks more like a chief executive officer than what was earlier in the statute when it was simply the weak mayor system.
Okay. Any other Councillor Hyatt, go ahead.
Thank you, through you. Just one question here on the planning. So does the strong mayor have the ability to override the planning from the upper tier government, like say Lambton County?
That's a good question. Mr. Mascarin, can you answer that, please?
I'll try, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that the mayor can do so. If there's an approval required at the upper tier, I don't think that the mayor can override that and dictate his wishes on the upper tier level. But that's the best way I can answer it.
That's good. Thank you.
You okay with that? Any other questions from council? Okay, Mr. Mascarin, if you'd like to carry on, please.
I will. And now, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go to the budget power or duty. It is now, council, no longer council's budget. It is actually the mayor's budget. The authority under the statute, following many of those strong mayor municipalities in the United States, it is the responsibility, the obligation, and the power of the head of council now to bring forward the budget. The mayor is, under the language of the statute, required to prepare and bring forward a budget to the municipality for adoption by council on or before February 1st. If the mayor does not do so, the mayor forfeits his right to bring forward the budget, and then it becomes council's responsibility. The language says if the mayor doesn't do this, on February the 2nd, council shall then bring forward the budget. I showed you earlier a number of delegation powers, and they all related to the administration authorities that I showed you. There is no authority for the mayor to delegate the responsibility for the budget back to council. Okay, I just want to be very clear. The province has saw fit to say there are 4 specific mayoral powers that can be delegated back to either council or, in one case, to the CAO. Those are the only ones. There is no authority here for the budget for the mayor to delegate it to anyone else, to council or to anyone else. So, but the mayor can forfeit the right. However, the mayor can issue directions to staff, because the powers are still in section 6.1 of the Act. The mayor can issue directions to staff to bring forward the budget earlier than February the 1st, or, for instance, to do it in a way that has been done in the last several years or past number of years, or to do it differently. For instance, the mayor could issue a direction to staff, say to the CAO, the treasurer, and the clerk, work together to bring forward a budget, create a budget committee where we will hash it out like as we've always done. Staff can prepare a staff proposed budget, and then council can hash it out, and then finally I can bring forward the budget. You can do that. The mayor can dig in and say, nope, I'm going to get my sleeves rolled up and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start working on the budget, and I'm not going to work with anyone else except perhaps senior staff. The mayor could conversely also do something like, you know, Mr. CAO, Madam Treasurer, Madam Clerk, you bring me forward. I don't care how you get there, but give me a zero budget or a -2% or a +2% budget. The mayor can do any of those things. There is no particular requirement for the mayor to do any particular things. It doesn't have any requirements except some timing on how this has to be done. Does the mayor have to be a CPA? No, the mayor doesn't have to have any accounting background whatsoever. But it is now the mayor's budget. Now, when the mayor finally brings forward the mayor's budget to council, council could adopt the budget, which means that it's over, it's done, or council can propose amendments. Council has 30 days in which to do so. If council proposes amendments, then the mayor can veto the amendments, and then you're into potentially council then vetoing or overriding the mayor's veto by a 2/3 vote. And there are some granular level of detail in the budget sections in the regulation, which I won't go into today. Out of all the powers that were granted as strong mayor powers, this is the one I probably know the least amount, because in the municipalities that I was advising that were in the first two tranches of strong mayor designations, the treasurers just ran with it, usually in concert with the mayor, and they asked me very few questions about the budget. But for you to know, it is the mayor's responsibility now to bring forward the budget. Okay, that's it on the budget, Mr. Mayor. Just one slide. I'm going to pause again and ask if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mascarin. I'll open it up to council. Any questions regarding the budget process? Councillor Welsh, go ahead.
A question through you. If there was an occasion where 2/3 of the council had to vote on something to veto something, it's all getting very confusing with the vetoing. And say you had an illness or someone who wasn't going to be present within those 21 days that things have to be brought forward, what would happen with that?
Mr. Mascarin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Welsh, if you don't achieve the 2/3, if someone is not there, as you know, there is no proxy voting. So if the person is just not available to attend the council meeting, to vote, because you'd have to do it at an open meeting of council, then you wouldn't achieve the 2/3 vote. Now, you know, you have hybrid meetings like the one that I'm attending today, and so there might be a possibility for someone just to show up just for the vote. But yes, if someone is away or they're hospitalized and they just can't attend, then it makes it way more difficult to achieve the 2/3.
Thank you. Anything else from council? If not, go ahead, Mr. Mascarin.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try to wrap it up. I've just got a couple of slides, 4 slides left, which just speak to the powers. These aren't new powers. And then I will have one concluding slide, and then I'm happy to take any questions that may be left over from anyone. So there is, and this is the question going back, I think, and I apologize, I think it was Councillor Clark and Councillor Welsh that asked me questions about possible disagreement with whether something was being exercised appropriately. So there is this, in my own personal view, unfortunately entitled section 284.14. It's called immunity. And I think most people looking at it would say, oh, the mayor's decisions are immune. It's not actually what it says, okay? So it doesn't actually say that, but that's the title. And I've pretty much set out in the slide there the actual wording of that provision. So I'm just going to read it because it's important. A decision made or a veto power or other power, I guess another power would be the direction power, exercised legally and in good faith under this part, under part 6.1, shall not be quashed or open to review in whole or in part by any court because of the unreasonableness or supposed unreasonableness of the decision that's made. Now at the bottom, and I know that's a mouthful there, but at the bottom I put see sections 272 and 273 of the Municipal Act. Why did I do that? Because this language borrows from both of those sections. 272 says you cannot challenge a bylaw on the basis of unreasonableness or supposed unreasonableness. So there's an immunity provision for bylaws on reasonability, okay? Now, section 273 is the section that permits any person to bring an application to quash a bylaw. That means to hold it without being of any effect, in whole or in part, based on illegality. And illegality has been determined to be bad faith, to include bad faith. So what's illegality? There's an actual decision that's just come out that speaks to what is illegal. It's the Tiny Township Association versus Tiny Township. Just came out. It's on. It's a case that deals with licensing of short-term rentals, and the court said any illegality is a non-compliance with any law, and bad faith is a lack of candor, frankness, transparency, and something that doesn't serve a proper purpose, something that's for an ulterior motive. So the way I read this, even though it's been labeled immunity, it means that you can decide, a decision or an action by a mayor can be challenged if someone can argue that it's illegal or it's not made in good faith. It's made in bad faith. So there can be challenges to court. However, if the bylaw is legal and it's passed in good faith, or a decision that's made or a direction given, then it can't be quashed and it can't be open to review in whole or in part by a court. That's why I said earlier, if the mayor, for instance, decides I'm going to advance a bylaw, a rezoning bylaw, and the rezoning bylaw gets passed with more than 1/3 of a vote, even though it may not be good planning, can someone still bring a challenge at the OLT? And my answer is this section will not stop it. This section says you can still do so. It talks about a court making either a judicial review or an application to quash. Okay, I know I've used a lot of legal terms there. I honestly didn't mean to get lawyerly on you, but I wanted to try to explain the immunity provision. It's not necessarily all decisions are immune. The ones that are illegal, the ones that are made in bad faith, can be challenged, and the route would be to possibly go to court. If it's something else, bad planning, for instance, a rezoning bylaw, then you can still bring a challenge by way of an appeal. Notice the words appeal aren't used anywhere here, to the OLT, to the extent that third-party appeal rights are still existing. The vacancy of a head of council can only be filled by a by-election. As you know, if there's any vacancy in an office of a member of council, council has a decision to make within 60 days of the declaration of vacancy. Council can appoint someone to fill the vacancy or run a by-election. Well, with respect to a strong mayor, the only thing that council can do is hold a by-election. A strong mayor must be elected. Does the mayor have to be elected, or can the mayor be acclaimed? If you look at section 37 of the Municipal Elections Act, on an acclamation, it says elected by acclamation. So the mayor can be acclaimed. Mayor can no longer be appointed in a strong mayor municipality, must be elected. However, the election can be by acclamation. Can someone other than the mayor exercise the strong mayor powers? Can the deputy mayor, you have a deputy mayor at your municipality, can the deputy mayor exercise the strong mayor powers if the mayor is absent? The answer is no. My view, and this is subject to some debate, my view is only the mayor can exercise the powers of a strong mayor, not anyone else. Even though you may have an elected official who's the deputy mayor who steps into the shoes of the mayor, not into the shoes of the mayor for the exercise of the powers or authorities or duties under under part 6.1 of the statute. So a deputy mayor, an acting mayor, an interim mayor cannot have the powers of the mayor. This is, as I indicated, subject to some debate. The city of Mississauga is an outlier and has taken the position, no, someone who's sitting in the place of the mayor, the deputy mayor, can exercise the powers. I don't see that it can be done. There is the requirement that all powers of a mayor must be in writing. The mayor must produce a written record, whether it's a decision, whether it is a veto, or whether it is a direction, must produce a written record by the next business day, provided to each member of council and to the clerk, and the clerk is required to make it available to the public in some way. Typically, this is done by a municipality setting up a separate web page on its website that speaks to mayoral decisions. Now, the mayoral decisions can be divided into three. It could be three separate web pages, which I don't see the utility, but it could be a web page that has all mayoral decisions, whether they're decisions, vetoes, or directions. You could, again, separate those into three. And in my view, to date, almost all of the mayoral decisions that I've seen, I'm using that in the broad term, mayoral decisions, have taken the format, and please don't be offended by the pejorative connotation, but they do look like executive orders. They really do. There's usually a short title. There's usually a section number of the regulation, or most often the statute. There are occasionally, typically, some whereas clauses, some recitals that bring some context to what is happening. And then there are numbered paragraphs, sometimes only one, where the mayor does whatever they want to do. Typically, these are quite short. They don't often look like bylaws that are sometimes quite lengthy. Okay, and there is regulation making authority granted to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing with respect to prescribing anything that may or must be prescribed under the statute. There are powers to set things dealing with the budget, because I think maybe the province hasn't thought through everything. And there is something that's really interesting where the province can come in and bring in a regulation that's retroactive. My view is the reason they did this is they anticipated that sometimes mayors may possibly act outside of the confines of what they're supposed to, and potentially the minister has the ability to come in and retroactively make that that decision or veto or direction better and in compliance with law. Finally, there is one amendment that has taken place that relates to the strong mayor powers, which is not in the Municipal Act, and that is in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. As you know, If you are a member of council, you can't take part in the decision-making process if you have a pecuniary interest, whether it's direct, indirect, or deemed. If you're at a council meeting, you must declare it at the beginning of the council meeting. Then you also have to file a written statement. That written statement is taken by the clerk and is put in the registry. Well, some of the authorities now of the mayor don't have to be exercised at council, but the general rule continues to apply. The mayor cannot exercise any strong mayor powers if the mayor has a pecuniary interest. That's in a new section 5.3b. The mayor shall not use any power or duty with respect to any matter in which the mayor has a pecuniary interest. Again, whether it's direct, indirect, or deemed by a family member. That's the one change that's been outside of the statute. And if you were to ask, yes, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act trumps the strong mayor powers. The mayor cannot act in his own his own financial self-interest. So that rule still applies. So finally, Mr. Mayor, I've come to the conclusion. Strong mayor powers, there are limited but incredibly significant executive powers and authorities that now reside in your office. There are those administrative / political powers. There are those 3 powers that only can be used for prescribed provincial priorities, so housing and infrastructure related to housing. And then there is the budget power and responsibilities. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the end of my presentation proper. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I'd be happy to take any questions that may be left by you or any members of council.
Thank you, Mr. Mascarin. And I also have a couple of comments I'd like to make at the end, but I'll open it up to Councillor Clark. Go ahead, please.
Through the mayor, you mentioned quite a few times OLT, court challenges, that kind of thing. I'm sure this is going to be a hard question to answer, but what would be the financial impact to the municipality of something like that?
Mr. Mascarin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Clark. I think they'd be significant. I think a court challenge, and how would it come forward? Well, in a number of different ways. A single member of council can bring a challenge. Council could pass a resolution to challenge the mayor's exercise of powers. Any resident, any business with the municipality that is upset about it can bring a challenge. And the cost to the municipality in seeking to defend the mayor's decision could be very consequential.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Welsh, go ahead, please.
I think you might have already answered this, but just in case. So if a bad decision was made, a ministerial order could come in and change that if a bad decision was made using strong mayor powers?
Mr. Mascarin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Welsh. Well, it all depends on what a bad decision is, but let's just say, for argument's sake, there is a bad decision and it needs to be corrected, and maybe council can't do it. Yes, the minister would have overriding authority under Section 47 of the Planning Act to bring a minister's zoning order to potentially rectify or repair any bad zoning decision or planning decision.
Any other comments from council? I have a couple before we wrap this up, and I know we're running for time here. We have a regular council meeting at 7, but I have a comment. First of all, I want to mention I am very happy with the CAO. I am very happy with the way this council operates and the system we have. So I wanted to make that clear for everyone present. It's working, and I'm happy with that. On a separate question, and this is a bit awkward, maybe you can help me, maybe you can't. Is there any advantage financially from the province for staying or keeping the strong mayor's powers? And I'm thinking about housing, servicing, and getting money from the province.
I'll try to answer that, Mr. Mayor. There was an incentive for the first couple of tranches of municipalities that came forward. You'll remember that I mentioned the $1.2 billion Building Faster Fund. That was only to be in place for 3 years for municipalities that I think exceeded targets, and they could get some monies that quite honestly had already been clawed back by the province through other changes to the Development Charges Act and other things that it had done. So there was an incentive. Right now, I think I think any incentive would be a soft incentive, and what I mean by that is maybe a municipality that shows that it's using the strong mayor powers appropriately, justifiably, honorably. Maybe the province would say, "Hey, you're having our back on this because that was the whole intent of why we were going to have this." So I think there might be certainly some goodwill, but I don't know if there's any immediate financial payoff, Mr. Mayor, to using the strong mayor powers, or a municipality not using the strong mayor powers, and a council member, a mayor saying, "You know what, I'm going to delegate some powers back and I just won't use it. I'm just going to let council continue to be the decision maker." So that's my answer.
Thank you. And I certainly like the idea if you can flip in and out. I think that's important for most mayors to understand. Anyway, I think because of time, if there's no other questions from council, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Field, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? That motion carries. We're now adjourned. Mr. Mascarin, I just want to thank you for your time and your presentation. It was great. I know there's a lot of heavy information, but most of us have read this information ahead of time to hopefully help. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the council, and I really do appreciate the questions and the opportunity to present for you today. So thank you very much. I won't hold you up, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay, for council, we will go in